أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We have now entered into the 18th day of the blessed month of Ramadan, and time is very quickly slipping by from our fingers, and this opportunity will perhaps never return until the next month of Ramadan, and who knows if we would be alive to witness that glorious month. And so let us make the most of this blessed month and to again further connect to the noble Qur'an. And what better way than to understand and appreciate the Qur'an better than through the thaqalain, the other of the two weighty things. That is the Prophet Muhammad and his noble family, the Ahlul Bayt. May God's peace and blessings be upon all of them. Today we want to share a tradition from the noble messenger of Allah in which he gives us some advice on specific chapters and specific verses of the Qur'an to read. And obviously all of the Qur'an we understand is important, but sometimes we see in the traditions that the infallibles will guide us to recitation of certain verses, certain chapters which have a greater, we can say, importance over other chapters. Although we know that the entire Qur'an is important, but certain verses are perhaps of a greater importance than other passages of the Qur'an. And in today's tradition, the Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him and his family, shares with us the following advice, as he has been quoted as saying, and he states the following: whoever recites the first 4 verses of Suratul Baqarah and also recites Ayatul Kursi, verse 255 of Suratul Baqarah, along with the 2 verses which follow it, verses 256 and 257, and the last 3 verses of the same surah, will not see anything bad or any sorrow in his life or his wealth, and Satan will not come near him, and he will not forget the Qur'an. Here the Messenger of Allah gives us a formula for life that we should all try and make a practice of reciting on a day-to-day basis, on a very frequent basis. And he shows us some specific verses of Suratul Baqarah to recite. He begins by asking us to recite the first 4 verses of Suratul Baqarah, and then following that Ayatul Kursi, which is clearly one verse of the Qur'an, which is chapter number 2, Suratul Baqarah, verse 255. And as a form of completion, as the Messenger of Allah says in this tradition, to recite also the following 2 verses which come after Ayatul Kursi, which are verses 256 and 257. And these 3 verses really form a completion, we can say, of the Ayatul Kursi. Although Ayatul Kursi is only 1 verse, as our scholars and traditions mention, but the verses which follow it also add some completion to the theme which is within that verse. And he also reminds us to recite the last 3 verses of Suratul Baqarah, 3 very beautiful passages in which we make a beautiful plea and supplication to Allah. And so the Prophet shows us that this will have multiple impact and effect within our lives. That sorrow and grief will be kept away from us. There will not come no harm to our wealth or our property. That Satan, the demonic force, that evil, demonic, despicable force that seeks to mislead us and misguide us away from the path of Islam, will not be able to come near us, and that we will not forget the Qur'an. And in fact, many of our scholars quote traditions and anecdotes in which they say, if you want to have a stronger memory, if you want to be able to memorize not only the Qur'an but even things, and have your memorization capabilities and capacity to be elevated and further built upon, they have always encouraged us to recite Ayatul Kursi and to memorize Ayatul Kursi. And so the Prophet of Allah shows us in this tradition also that this collection of verses, these 10 verses, which if you look at it will only take you maybe 3 to 4 minutes to recite on a nightly basis, that these have a very powerful spiritual effect on the heart of the believer and on the surroundings of the individual who is constant in its recitation. And so as the month of Ramadan is, as we're going through this blessed month, let us make a pact to ourselves to begin a constant recitation of these passages, and to make it a regular habit on a daily basis, to either begin the day or to end our night before we go to bed with the recitation of these particular verses of Suratul Baqarah. May Allah make it easier upon us to read, to reflect, to understand, and to memorize the noble Qur'an. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.